Hello, this is Renaud from Agilian. I'm going to talk about our new product introduction process and more specifically about the typical timelines from the end of the product design until mass production, and a few notes about the roadmap, how to think of the roadmap for your product. So this is an important slide. This is about the main steps between the end of product design and development and the start of mass production. Okay, this is for a product of low to medium complexity, not high complexity. Okay, and the timelines are a little bit optimistic. Okay, but I want to keep it simple. I want to keep it all compact on one slide. So let's say on your side, or maybe with a design house, you've been doing component sourcing, engineering design work, you have some functional prototypes, you've been testing them, getting feedback, and so on. You do a handover to a contract manufacturer such as Agilian. There's a design for manufacturing review. That's the first step, usually. That often reveals some adjustments that need to be made on the product design. And let's say they are not deep readjustments, right? So the adjustments get done within a couple of weeks or something. Okay. Then at some point, some of the long lead time components need to be ordered. Much better to work on this with your contract manufacturer, not yourself, your company buying it, because that can make things much more complicated, especially for manufacturing in China. Then let's say there are only a few last things to validate and it's not very complicated. The design is really very close to being final. There might be just one last iteration of prototyping. Okay, so let the contract manufacturer put together the prototype. And typically they would call it engineering validation. Okay, and prototypes get tested and let's say everybody's happy about it, the product design can be frozen, right? In parallel, do not forget to work on packaging. Do not wait until this phase here. Okay, if you want a nice custom packaging, it's better to start working on it earlier. But the effect of this freeze means that the work on production tooling can start, right? Here you might have already a bit of tooling. It's not a bad idea to verify some of the product requirements. But if that's not done, or if that tooling is not a good fit for production, it's good to start to work on production tooling anyway. So we call it we call this blue phase tooling validation, right? So making the tooling, doing the trials, putting together some samples out of the shots, parts made with that tooling, and in the background also doing a lot of preparations, right? So typically on the manufacturing side, the assembly fixtures, maybe the testing stations, assembly work instructions, packaging work instructions, etc. All of these need to be developed. On the quality side, the acceptance criteria, the test plan, things like that. All of that needs to be developed so that it's ready when the time comes for the pre-production pilot runs. Okay, and here I budgeted only about 1 month. Okay, and this also is about 2 months for the tooling phase is okay usually for products with relatively low complexity. In some cases, it has to be longer. Okay, all this needs to be adjusted to the real case, obviously. But let's say, okay, let's start to order some parts for the pilot run. Let's use the tooling to make parts and let's start to run a small batch, maybe 50 pieces, okay? At the same time, some of these samples made with tooling are sent to laboratories for compliance testing, for reliability testing. You take a little bit of a risk, you go into this phase anyway without getting the okay for this. And in some cases, there's not enough samples here. So we need to pick some samples from the pilot run to send to do some testing. Okay. So if some of the testing is failed, then what, right? You need to think about this. And then let's say only one preparation pilot run is sufficient. Everybody's happy. We can go into mass production. So maybe make 50 pieces here, then go into 800 mass production order one, then maybe 2,000, 5,000, 10,000. You can ramp things up, hopefully, fast enough for the needs of your business, right? And then ship out as they get as the devices as the units are ready. There's a little bit of a risk here also, in that maybe you haven't gathered a lot of feedback from representative users because you try to do everything in a very tight schedule, right? So maybe some of these samples can be sent to representative users. We're going to use them with expected sort of normal kind of use. And then after 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, you see what they tell you if you have any feedback, right? Same thing for some of the products made in the pilot run. Okay, but if you go straight as fast as possible into mass production and ship it out, well, you might find that some of the users use it in a way that you never thought about. That came back in across a number of projects, so we know it happens, and you might be surprised. Okay, and also a big caveat is that if there's any gap here, because the customer is not approving things fast, maybe they go on holiday for a couple of weeks. Maybe they are fundraising. Oh, we got through tooling, but now we barely have enough money to pay for that, and we definitely cannot do mass production. Okay, then suddenly 2 months go by and nothing happens. Well, obviously the whole schedule falls flat. Now let's take the same kind of graph, but accelerated. Okay, because people always ask us, what would that look like? Can you make it faster? So before I explain it, I need to say two things. First, it comes with a much higher budget because it's going to be much more intense. Okay, so you're talking about project managers doing a call with everybody sort of every day or 2 or 3 times a week. You talk about putting more resources at the times where more resources really help go faster. You're talking about expediting shipping. You're talking about paying express fees for lab testing, things like that. All right. So all of that together means the budget is higher. But let's look at it. So user testing. So you make some prototypes, maybe make more prototypes, and already put them in the hands of users earlier. Okay. But maybe you don't do any accelerated reliability testing. Okay. So there might be some issues you don't see until you start to deliver actually in mass production. Design for manufacturing, maybe both teams work together. Maybe you have your team flying to the contract manufacturer's place in China and staying there for 3 weeks. We had several customers doing just that, and it helps go faster. But of course, there's flights and hotels, and these people might not be very happy being away from their families for 3 weeks, right? These are a few examples. You might start to work on tooling before the design is frozen. So maybe there's several, I don't know, modules or parts of your product, and maybe you think, well, that part is pretty mature. The design is not going to change, so we can already start to make the tooling for it, and then we hold on. We hold off until the last minute until we finalize the design on that part of the product, right? That happens. That happens, and it's based on a risk analysis, and it kind of makes sense if you really want to go fast. Making the components for the pre-production pilot run and also for mass production. So sometimes to go faster, to save a little bit of time on the mass production or maybe the second and third pre-production pilot runs, it's all ordered at once, right? So that we don't have to wait every time for the components. That makes sense in a way. It does shave some time off. Now the problem is, what if there's a big quality issue on the custom designed components? What if, well, they're all made in one batch, but we have no idea when they make new batches, is everything still going to be within the tolerance? Were they just lucky the first time, right? How repeatable is the process? And similarly, you do your compliance testing, reliability testing with some parts coming off of tooling, right? But you don't wait for the results. You already go through preparation pilot run and you already plan for mass production. What if it shows you that there's an issue, right? So you are exposed to more risks. And what's very important is that risk doesn't just mean, oh, there's the risk that things go wrong, so you waste a little bit of extra money. Risk can set you back. Sometimes you waste 2 months on your project, so you need to add an extra 2 months just to go back, do things properly, and then go back to the phase where you were, right? So people need to understand risk doesn't just mean, oh, it might cost $5,000 extra. Well, you might lose your whole tooling, which costs $50,000 plus. You need to remake it and revalidate it and da da da. And then you need also to change the design first. So in total, you waste 2 months. That sometimes happens. Okay. I also mentioned it's good to think of the roadmap. Version 1, version 2, version 3. People who develop a new product often try to get everything right, and they don't think in terms of different versions that will come over time, right? So version 1 doesn't have to be perfect. It should be innovative and should provide sufficient value. And then you get a ton of feedback. That feedback, you cannot really plan for it. You cannot just discover it through customer interviews. It's real feedback from real use of your product by real people in their real environment. Okay. Version 2, you address the main shortcomings. Now you're a little bit proud of your product, right? Reliability is much better, customer support, distribution, etc. And the whole buying experience, using experience get better. And then version 3 is better and goes after a wider market. Now, this is not from me. I didn't come up with this kind of framework. I would highly suggest you read this book named Bulb by Tony Fadell, who worked for a long time at Apple. And he really says, hey, your V1 should target, early adopters and innovators. Like, it doesn't need to be perfect. Yeah, perfect will get you people in the late majority and laggards, but you go after that actually with your version 3, right? So that's really a powerful way of thinking about it. So don't try to make your product perfect. Remember, minimum feature set, okay? Not whole product. Whole product will be later, not with version 1. Okay, I hope that was helpful. Let us know if you have any questions. Thanks.